want to see your Parliament.
Good morning, and may I welcome all of you. First of all, officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, the Union Estate Electricity Generation Company Limited, UEEGCL, as well as members of the media and members of the public. Let me first of all introduce our team here, and we will then go on to the officials who are here with us. My name is Senator Wade Mark, and I'm the chairman of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. I will now ask my colleague on my immediate right to introduce himself, and we will go around the table until we reach the end, and we'll start afterwards.
I'm Fitzgerald Hines, member of this committee.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is David Small. I'm a member of this committee.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Durham-Kisoon. I'm Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance Investments Division.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yvette Bab. I'm the Acting Director, Social and Economic Transformation, Investments Division, Ministry of Finance.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Maharaj, Senior Business Analyst, Investments Division, Ministry of Finance.
Good morning. My name is Foster Cummings, member of the committee.
Good morning. I am Cherian Critchlow-Coburn, member of the committee.
May I invite members of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, as well as officials of the Union Estate Electricity Generation Company Limited, to introduce themselves at this time.
Morning, everyone. I'm Heidi Wong, advisor at the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sheldon Butcher, Senior Chemical Engineer, Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries.
Yes, I agree with you.
Good morning, all. I am Cummings-Williams, Director of Human Resource Services, sitting on behalf of P.S. Lashley, who's unavoidably out of the country at this time.
Morning, everyone. Mark Rudder, Senior Energy Analyst, Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries.
May I at this time invite my colleague to introduce herself and for the record.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Jennifer Primus, a member of this committee.
Thank you so very much to everyone. May I inform everyone that the meeting is being held, the meeting that is taking place at this time, is being held in public and is also being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11, as well as Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's topic via email parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, Twitter @ttparliament. Members, may I also inform everyone that the purpose of our meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the Union Estate Electricity Generation Company Limited for the period 2008 to 2015. The committee is desirous of hearing the challenges being faced by the key stakeholders at this particular entity known as Union Estate Electricity Generation Company Limited, or UEEGCL, in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges. The role of the committee is to help UEEGCL improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. I think it is appropriate at this time for me to invite the chairman of the UEEGCL to make some brief opening remarks at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I seek your indulgence to introduce the other members of the team, if I may, before I do opening remarks. I am Sandra Jones, Chairman of the Union Estate Electricity Generation Company Limited.
Vishnudan Paul, Director.
David Yanwood, former Chairman of UEEGCL.
Namdev Budram, CEO of TGU.
Nigel Chinapu, Chief Operating Officer of TGU, subsidiary of UEEGCL.
Maxine Wynn, Assistant General Manager, UEEGCL.
Ian Anthony, Corporate Secretary at the subsidiary Trinidad Generation Unlimited.
So I think we have now corrected it. So you are now invited to make brief opening remarks at this time.
Thank you, Chair. Chairman and honorable members, thank you for the opportunity to make these few opening remarks before the commencement of the deliberation. Most of the activity of UEEGCL and its subsidiary, TGU, takes place at TGU, which manages and operates the 720 megawatts combined cycle electricity generation plant located at the Union Estate in Vesini Village, Labrie. TGU is one of the 3 independent power producers, IPP, operating in Trinidad and Tobago. And I must say it is the most efficient. The Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, TNTEC, presently takes 600 megawatts, or approximately 50% of the nation's current demand from TGU, and expects very shortly to increase this amount to 640 megawatts. At this dispatch, TGU not only saves TNTEC money, but also saves the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, NGC, approximately 100 SCF, metrics in measurement in gas, daily, such savings being sufficient to supply 2 standard methanol plants. Construction of the facility commenced in TGU in 2008 with a foreign partner. The first phase of the facility was commissioned on August 1st, 2011, and the total facility was completed in December 2012. UEEGCL bought out the foreign partner in 2013, leaving the management and operations solely in the hands of the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago through EEGCL. The audited consolidated financial statements of UEEGCL for the period 2008 to 2015 reflects this history. The audited consolidated financial from 2008 to July 2011 will reflect the construction period of the facility, and those from August 2011 to 2015 will reflect the early operations period of the facility. The audited consolidated financials will also reflect the period of the joint venture from 2008 to July 2013, and thereafter when government, through UEEGCL, took full control of the facility. The road from 2008 to where we are now has been challenging, but we are proud to say that our management and staff have successfully managed and maintained the operation of the facility from 2011 to present. The team has made significant strides in bringing pride to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago in the following ways. The facility was completed within budget. The facility is fully operational. It's run entirely by local personnel since startup in 2011 and has been meeting its required availability target of 93% of the 720 megawatts under the power purchase agreement. It should be noted that the United States norm for power availability is 88%, and we have achieved 90%. We are achieving our 93%. The operations of TGU have been endorsed by the international financial community through its success in raising US $600 million unsecured 11-year bond. The successful borrowing on the international market is a direct result of investors' confidence in TGU. This investor confidence has largely been as a result of the high level of the operations of the company, and it has resulted in a fourfold oversubscription of the bonds, surpassing any such financing completed for the Latin American region. TGU's bondholders are from the Caribbean, North America, Europe, and Asian regions. To date, TGU has been able to maintain that investors' confidence. In closing, I need to add, we are committed at TGU and Union Estate to institutional strengthening activities to ensure that the gains that we have made over the years, that we can keep and surpass them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. Because of the very significant role that this entity plays in national development, before we can get into the audited financial accounts of this entity, I think it is very prudent for us to first inquire of the permanent secretary located in the investments division in the Ministry of Finance as to the precise role and function of the investments division of the ministry in conducting oversight responsibilities of this particular entity, particularly in the field of the financials, and exactly how does the investment division of the Ministry of Finance go about conducting its oversight duties and responsibilities insofar as this important entity is concerned for the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Permanent Secretary, you may wish to provide us with some clarity on this matter, please.
Thank you, Chair. Now, the Union Estate Electricity Generation Company Limited is a one of the flagship entities in the energy sector. Our relationship with the company continues to evolve over the years, and we look forward to strengthening and deepening the partnership. We must say that the unsecured 11-year bond raised by the subsidiary in the sum of $600 million US was encouraging, and not only did it repay government its advances, but we believe that it contributed to heightening Trinidad and Tobago's profile in the international financial market. The company's responsibility now is to ensure that TGU maintains its international credit rating and meeting the expectations of bondholders. We in the Ministry of Finance will facilitate the company in this regard, and we are putting measures in place to continue to ensure that the company meets and stands up to the scrutiny of the International Credit Rating Agency.
Madam Secretary, are you satisfied? Are you satisfied that given the flagship nature of this very important entity, that the government, through the investment division, and the ministry, I should say, is happy and comfortable with the degree of financial internal controls that govern the activities of this very important flagship company? And if you are not, what steps have been taken by your ministry to bring this very important entity into what is called 21st century proper governance shape?
Thank you, Chair. The internal controls, now the company runs a very lean organization. I believe there are 2 members of staff. And we received a copy of their internal audit report just this week on Monday. The report suggests some significant weaknesses, and I believe the report has listed about 18 issues dealing with internal controls, and this report focused mainly on procurement. The report was, we received alongside the report the note from the chairman, which acknowledged the weaknesses and measures that are being put in place. And as far as the Ministry of Finance, we would follow up with the company through our Central Audit Committee to ensure that these recommendations, as noted in the report, are followed up upon.
Could you advise us which period you're referring to as it relates to that internal audit report?
The report covers the period December 31st, 2014, for the 6-month period ending 30th of June, 2015.
Who secured that report, or who actually conducted that audit, I should ask?
The company, UEEGCL, commissioned, it doesn't have an internal audit department, so it commissioned an audit firm to conduct this audit.
What's the name of that audit firm?
Grant Thornton, ORB, Grant Thornton LLC.
Is there any subsequent audit reports from the company subsequent to what you have just read to us?
I am not aware of any, Chair. I received this one on Monday.
But I think this report, if I'm not mistaken, we have a copy of it ourselves. And that report, from what I am seeing here, would have been commissioned it was for the period ended 31st December 2014 and January 1st June to June 30th 2015. Now, what's the date of this report?
That's the same report I have, Chair.
When was this? No, when was this commissioned? When was this report? Could anyone advise us when this report was commissioned and issued? Madam Chair, Sandra Jones, could you advise us? When was this report submitted to the company, Union Estate?
Chair, I was told that it was submitted in 2016. Yes.
What time in 2016 precisely?
If I may, I can speak with Mr. Deandra, please.
Please.
The communication of the transmittal of the document came, I think, in December 2016.
December 2016?
Yes.
But why has the PS only received this report, Madam Chairman, only this week? If this report would have come into the possession or into the hands of the Union Estate since December of 2016.
Chair, I must admit it was an oversight, I was told, but as soon as we were aware of it, we took action to make sure that it got into the right places.
May I ask, Madam Chair, how long has your board been in existence and has been installed at this particular Union Estate?
This board was installed in June 2017.
And you only made aware of this report when? In 2017 or 2018?
We were made aware of it in 2018.
When in 2018?
February 2018, the latter part.
But why would a company seek to deny access to the board of directors of the Union Estate? Why would the management seek to deny the board of directors under your chairmanship, not to mention the Ministry of Finance? Permanent Secretary has just admitted she's only in receipt of this document last week. I haven't asked the director of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries whether they are in receipt of such a document. But could you explain to this committee why such an important flagship company would deny the people of Trinidad and Tobago, through your board as chairman, such a critical report? Because as you know, this is a very critical internal audit report. Could you share with us, clarify with us what has happened there?
Chair, I concur with your views. What I was informed that largely efforts were being made to take corrective action in treating with some of the issues that the auditors flagged. The Chief Executive Officer is here, and he can be able to give an explanation of further explanation on the matter.
Chief Executive Officer, you wish to clarify for this committee's clarification or edification as to why this report, I wouldn't want to say it was deliberately misheld. I don't want to go there. But how long have you been CEO of this entity, sir?
Since September 2015.
And could you tell us why the chairman of the board, as well as the permanent secretary in the investment division, were not given this report with all the serious implications? And we haven't gone into that areas yet. But why that report was not made available to Mrs. Sandra Jones immediately upon her becoming chairman on behalf of the people of TNT in control of this very important board and company called Union Estate. Could you tell us why?
Basically, in terms of the report, we had, in fact, handled most, or rather, practically all of the deficiencies already. And I did not see it necessary at that time, seeing that we had handled all of the issues and developed a new procedure with respect to procurement.
Mr. CEO, you remember you are a trustee of the people of this country. And I don't think it's a question about your feelings. I think you have a duty. This is an entity that is 100% owned and controlled by the taxpayers of the country. And it is a duty on your part to bring to the attention of the taxpayers through the board of directors, through the line ministry, through the investment division, such a report. Because the report, as I said, we haven't begun to examine its contents. But how can you, indicate to this committee that you didn't see it fit, or it wasn't fitting at that time to so submit? Because all the recommendations were addressed. And that is something that I query.
Chair, the report was in fact submitted to the previous board, and as I said, we were addressing the issues related to them.
All right, just let me raise one other question before. I have a series, but I want to ask Mrs. Sandra Jones. There is, in your report of December 31st, 2015, on page 29, I just discovered the page because I thought it was missing. But in 2014, I understand it is here. So it is the Union Estate Consolidated Financial Statements for December 31st, 2014. There's an item on page 29, and your figures are expressed in US dollars, not TT dollars. Under administrative expenses, there is an item called legal and professional fees. In 2013, it was 1.845 million US dollars. In 2014, it was 1.263 million US dollars. But I have run into a roadblock. Madam Chair, rather, when we look at the audited financial statements for the year ended 31st of December 2015, there is no notes on administrative expenses. So I cannot tell you, nor the population of the country, what was the legal costs and professional fees for 2015. Could you, first of all, explain to us who provides or who provided these legal and professional services, to this company called Union Estate for 2013, for 2014, and for 2015. But more importantly, could you tell this committee what it cost Union Estate in financial 2015 for the services under this item, legal and professional fees? Which company provided that service? And do you have the directors of the names? Do you have the names of the directors of the company in question? We need to get that information.
Chair, could I ask Mr. Chinapu to provide those?
Mr. Chinapu, thank you. Provide. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. The 2015 legal and professional fees figure, to my knowledge, is 1139, which compares to the 2014 figure of 1263. We can send to the committee the schedule of the administrative expenses that will match the 2014 line for line so that the committee can be aware of the
Yes, we would welcome that. And could you tell us who provided these legal and professional services to the Union Estate Electricity Generation Company Limited for the years identified? And I'm just dealing with 2013, 2014, and 2015 so far.
To my knowledge, there were a variety of service providers during those periods. There was not one individual firm, and the services being rendered differed in the individual years. In 2014, if the chair allows, I can go backwards from 2015 because it's just easier chronologically. In 2015, Union Estate would have been incurring costs, and most of these legal costs are actually flowing through from the subsidiary TGU, as these are the consolidated financial statements. At the parent company level, as you heard, is a shell oversight company to TGU. So during 2015, TGU would have been undertaking its attempt to examine the bond market and get proposals from financing companies. That bond was eventually closed the following year in 2016, but significant legal and other costs would have been incurred by a variety of local and foreign counsel, and we can provide a schedule after of those fees. In 2014 and 2013, the company was engaged in engaging legal firms, both local and international, subsequent to the handover of the facility from the EPC contractor. And while the facility was handed over on time, within budget, there were some discrepancies that both AES, the former joint venture partner, and UEEGCL were working on post-commissioning of the plant that required these legal services.
Yeah, we are dealing with 2014 and 2015. We're dealing with 2013. You must have in your possession the names of the legal entities, both local and foreign, that provided those services, as well as the amounts that were paid to these local entities and foreign entities. Do you have that information available to you?
I don't have the schedule in front of me right now, but we are able to provide it.
You don't have the schedule available? Did you have any agencies or any companies within your enterprise, within your company, that provided legal and professional services?
Sorry, Chair. Within TGU?
Yeah.
Or Union?
No. Well. You remember, Union Estate is a shell.
Yes.
It's the holding company with 2 employees, but the real company is TGU with about 70 odd workers. So I'm asking you, since TGU is the driver of a lot of the activities, but you are responsible through the chairman for that entity. Can you tell this committee whether you have anyone within your organization who has a company that has provided legal and professional services during the period that we are reviewing? So we are talking about 2008 to 2015. Can you tell this committee whether there is anyone within the family of TGU and or Union Estate or both that has an interest in the provision of legal and professional services?
So the company did have a corporate secretary, so we would have paid for services for its corporate secretary, and as well as outside of the corporate secretary, other local counsel, in addition to the international counsel. Those would be the main parties.
I'll pause for the moment and ask Mr. Hines, and then Mrs. Small, and then Mrs. Batiste, and I'll come to my colleagues here. Mr. Hines, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Granted that your board has recently or fairly recently taken responsibility for this entity, when I listened to your presentation in your opening remarks today, and I listened to the opening remarks of the PS in the Ministry of Finance Investment Division, I felt, having listened, that as a citizen without access to what is in front of me, I would have been wholly comforted by all that I heard. But having access to what is in front of me, I cannot be so comforted. And therefore, I want to return, before we get into the specifics, to the initial issue that was raised properly so by our chairman, as to the question of the oversight responsibility of the board of the investments division, corporation sole. When the APS in the investments division spoke, she spoke, in my view, in futuristic terms. What will be done in the future? We were concerned about what was done in the past. And then when I heard the CEO, who has been there since 2015, tell us this morning that he decided that that list of adversities, 18 of them, as the PS in Investments told us, was being dealt with by the entity at the management level, considering that the management would have created those problems or be responsible for creating them. We are hearing this to mean himself create the problem and himself fixing them and himself telling himself that they fix. That is not proper oversight and management of an entity of such national significance. So we are not altogether comforted. I would like to place for the future, if a CEO takes that position in relation to the board, and more than that, the investments division, on behalf of the Ministry of Finance, I must say flatly, I consider that to be dangerous. I consider that and that decision to be a danger to the company, a danger to the board and a danger to the company, a danger. And I say so because now we are getting into the substantive issues in front of us, the serious issues in front of us, Just to think that a decision was taken not to share it with those who must have financial oversight to prevent these things from happening to be very dangerous. So we would like, just to follow up on the last point made by the chairman, to get in writing, of course, the companies that provided the legal services and the amounts paid to them and other pertinent information so that this committee could perform its oversight role. I'll give way, for the time being, to my colleague, Mr. Small. Proceed from there. And before you go, and I said what I said in terms of danger for the note of the board. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Good morning again to everyone. Mr. Chairman, again, before I come, I wish to say that I'm deeply troubled by what I've heard so far, and then the documentation has some startling and actually shocking revelations of some things that have been happening at this company. But I am not satisfied with the response, Mr. Chairman, I got from the CEO on this matter of a staff member providing services to the company. I think anybody in any type of entity would know that that is complete disregard for good corporate practice. No entity, even if you do that, there needs to be a Chinese wallet. You just don't have somebody providing services, a staff member providing. And then, here's my concern, Mr. Chairman. According to the CEO, the legal fees total was about 1.13 million for 2015. However, in the what you provided us in the 2015, I looked in the consolidated accounts. I couldn't, the note that would normally break it out is missing. So the note is not included. Perhaps I have a wrong copy, Mr. Chairman, but the copy I have, the note that would break out the administrative expenses, so as to see what those numbers are, is not missing. And in the unconsolidated, the number for 2015 is 0. And yet you said the total is 1.13 million. So I am a pretty good study with financial accounts, and these type of errors are not supposed to happen when you engage a professional accounting firm. Something went wrong in here, and I'm not blaming anybody. But when I look at this, I start to wonder what else is amiss, because there's a trend of activity happening at TGU that is not in line with good corporate practice. I would like to ask, Mr. CEO, my first question, the employee that you referenced regarding services, legal or whatever, is that employee still engaged with the company?
Sorry, if I could, member, just clarify 1 or 2 points and answer
Certainly,
your question.
Please. We love information.
So we just checked. I opened the soft copy to give you the figure. So the official audited financials have the page with the breakdown. We will endeavor to get it to you. I'm not sure why it's not in your package, but we do have it. There is no employee who is also engaged to provide services. There is no employee at TGU or at UGCL who also engages to provide services. The comment I made, just to clarify, is that we have legal services being provided from a number of sources, but one is on contract, which is our corporate secretary, which is a contractual position. So there is no staff member who is who provides any services.
So let me get this clear. So the contract, forgive me, I want to be clear because we like to have correct information. You have a corporate secretary engaged in a contract to provide corporate secretarial services. So that is the arrangement.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, well, that helps us.
I apologize for the confusion.
When information is presented to us in a particular way, you read it and you're not sure what you're seeing.
No, I apologize for the confusion, but hopefully we've clarified.
Good. Well, all right. And the oversight is a printing error because it goes up to note 17 and then it goes to note 19, so note 18 is missing.
We do apologize. We saw the page miss here. We do have the official financials.
That is fine, Mr. Chief Operating Officer.
All right, sir.
I want to address, Mr. Chairman, through you, I have a couple other short little baby questions at the beginning here.
No, but before you go, it may not be
I will come back to it. Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, forgive me. I know that you would have taken office at a time when this audit would have been already completed, and by your record, what you put in the record today, you only found out of this mere weeks ago. I noted the comment that we see you, but several of the findings inside of here are so of the auditor. Let me help you, Madam Chair, because this is egregious. In the auditing business, there's something called looking at the chronology of the dates of how things happen. So if a company issues a purchase request and then issues a purchase order, and then the supplier provides an invoice, you would think that the dates would go the 1st of March, 10th of March, 15th of March. But the auditor here has found several dozen instances where the invoices were dated before the process began. So that you have invoices for services dated before the purchase order was issued. That's fraud. I am not going to put any type of color on it. That's fraud. That's collusion. There's no way a provider can provide an invoice for services before the purchase order was issued, unless there's a nice group of people sitting there working inside the system, trying to beat the way in which the controls of the company. And I'm going to go down the line because this, and this is not directed at you, Madam Chair. This is because the company had no internal audit process, and when you bring in an external auditor to look at it, this is what they find, that people have systematically abused the processes of the company for their own gain or for whatever type of gain. So again, let me help you, Madam Chair, because I would have thought that as an incoming board, as the CEO, I would have said, Madam Chair, we had some serious issues at this company. We are working through to find a way to be able to resolve these issues, or we've resolved these issues, but I want you to be aware that if someone asks a question, these are the things that have come out. Rather than have the chairman now stand sitting there and not fully okura with some very egregious things that have been happening to the company. If someone feels that they're not egregious, please explain to the committee why some of these things have happened. And bear in mind, the auditor comes in and does a sample. So if the auditor comes in and does a 5% or 10% sample and finds dozens of these transactions, it suggests that the universe of bad things that happen is much larger than what is presented here. I am in the audit business myself, so I understand what happens when an auditor does a sample. And this is scary, because the numbers in here, and this is through the chair, the auditor is very kind in that they've listed the number of incidences, but they didn't put the value. So I would like, through the chair, to request several of these, for many of these things, what would the value of these so-called transactions that occurred? I will just go to one more before I yield to my colleague here, Mr. Chairman, because I spent all night reading your documentation. It was very elucidating. So you have another finding where a couple dozen, again, quotations were received from people who were not on the approved vendors list or weren't even invited to tender. So I am not aware of how a tenderer could provide something and they're not even on the vendors list. Well, you can see how this document is tabbed up. I'm scared of this document. I'm the Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Finance, so they only have received these a few days ago, and so that may not have had the time to spend all night reading it as I did. But this is scary stuff in here, and I will come back to a couple of these things. But it points. So I want to get the CEO. I would like to find out from the CEO. When you received this report and you started action it, did you not think that there was a complete breakdown, at least in some areas of the administration of this business? And at the very least, I should alert the new members of the board that these were issues, are particularly egregious issues, and what is the action plan to treat them? Because what normally happens, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, and Mr. CEO, is that you have an internal audit unit. They put all of the findings, and then the management action for them, and then a timeline to get them done. If you've done, as you said, completed, I want to see that timeline. I want to see what was the manager's response for every single item. It's not in here. All this does, it flags where the problems are. And I have it nicely colored tabs all over the place because the issues in here are serious. Mr. CEO, I'd like to get a response from you on one, did you really understand the severity of what was going on in the company? And two, why, if you understood what was severely going on wrong in the company, did not draw it to the immediate attention of the new board?
Chair, these issues were, in fact, this report was presented to the previous board, and as I said, actions were taken, and I will provide a timeline and the actions that were taken to address the issues. In terms of bringing the attention to the new board, again, I am of the opinion that we had finished addressing these issues because we came out with, by the end of 2016 and early 2017, we had put these issues at rest. At the time the new board came on, there were other issues that we were dealing with, and I did not see these issues as still existing or posing any threat going forward.
Can I have one quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman? I have listened to your response, and I'm not convinced and I'm not satisfied with the response. You're the Chief Executive Officer, and here's what I posit to you. Even if I accept what you say 100%, you'd have received notification from this committee that you're coming here. I would have thought that you'd have been properly briefed, your chair and your board, provided a schedule that, Madam Chair, indeed, these issues have, this is information be provided to the committee, and these issues may come up. And that, Madam Chair, this is the executive action that we've taken, as you said, completed to complete all these actions, so you can assure the committee from your point of view as the chair. So, Madam Chair, I'm asking you, did you get any briefing on these issues from the CEO?
Yes. Member, yes. When we were preparing for presentation for this meeting, the CEO as well as the Chief Operating Officer did have some discussion with it on these matters with us. I must say, though, that the last board, and the chairman is here, because of the issues that they saw coming out from the startup period of starting up the company, they recognized that they have to, instead of to move from dealing with operating the plant, they had to really and truly treat with the issue of getting the institution and the management systems up and running. I don't know if it was a concern that was of theirs, but certainly I must give credit to the last board and the chairman in particular for actually commissioning that internal audit report, and because it didn't have the capability from within. The issue, it is what we have seen here with respect to the internal audit findings of that period really was a bit of concern for us, and since we got in as a board, we did ask about issues about internal audit. We saw that there was a need, and we noted that within the then existing structure, a decision was made to have internal audit be done, contracted out. This board felt that, no, this should not be. We should have that in-house capability. And we have taken action to ensure that a compliance officer, which was introduced in the organizational structure for the last board coming out of that internal audit report that they received, that is there, and we have approved the position of internal audit and auditor, and as a matter of urgency, the ads would be going out shortly, and we are seeking to be ready and truly address those issues. What I must say, though, that without the capability of having the presence there of internal audit or internal auditing unit, we did take on board that an attempt was made to introduce a computerized system by the name of Maximo, which really and truly have some auditing features. So I hope that I have answered the question that you have asked, but certainly some attempt was made when we were preparing for this, but we are concerned and we are taking action.
Mr. Chairman, I have one final comment. Madam Chair, I thank you for your response and your frankness. I want to say that having been and had some experience with auditing and understanding compliance, there's a difference between auditing and compliance. So having a compliance officer doesn't treat it audit issues. So I want to put that on the record. There's no question about it. Anyone wants to argue about that with me, we can have a discussion in the corridor after. The other issue, Maximo, I'm very familiar with Maximo because I have some other experience in other places. And while Maximo allows for a trail of operating, it's really to deal with the operating part of the business. What we see here, Madam Chair, with the greatest respect and to all the members of the board, is a pattern of behavior by officials who are in charge of procurement, who have found ways to twist and bend the system. Let's not try to put any other nice, cozy words around it. This suggests, these findings suggest there's a pattern of behavior over a period of time. Because what happens, the Grant Thornton came in and reviewed documentation from a period, and of the documentation that they could find, no minutes of the audit committee or the tenders committee, no minute. It goes on. So I'm happy to hear, Madam Chair, that the company is looking to treat it an internal audit, having an internal audit function in the company, because that's the way forward. All I'm saying is that because he didn't have an internal audit, people were very, very mischievous. And because we will be requesting to quantify the numbers in it, the instances are listed, but not the numbers. Because I expect that the numbers might be actually pretty scary as to what went wrong. Because we want to understand is, Madam Chair, let me be clear. Last comment, Mr. Chair. If we don't understand what went wrong with this, we may not be able to prevent it in the future. And that's all. That's what this committee is about. We want to make sure that the company is in a better place going forward. Mr. Chair, I'm done for this round.
Before I ask Mr. Jennifer Batiste Primus to intervene, Mrs. Jones, we were told earlier on by the former chairman that the company was in receipt of this Grant Thornton report, audit report, we understand, in December of 2016. One of the recommendations coming out of that report was the urgent engagement of an internal auditor. That was December of 2016. We are now in March. We got some responses from the company to some of our queries and questions. And would you believe that this flagship company in the energy sector, involving hundreds of millions of dollars, is still searching for an internal auditor? Is this company serious? How can you explain to the taxpayers of this country and to this committee that after almost 15 months, this company has not been able, with all the resources at its disposal, to locate an auditor, an internal auditor, to monitor its activities at an internal level? And Madam Chair, could you tell this committee when would that happen?
Chair, as I indicated previously, the last decision with respect to internal audit, from what we saw, this our board, so that the intention was to contract in that internal auditing service. What we have decided is to have that capacity and capability within. And we are hoping that by March, April, we should be able to have somebody on board to actually get that function up and running. And I must say again, we are very mindful of the new procurement legislation, and we do have a revised procurement policy there to really treat with those issues. You know, we are concerned, and as I said before, about those areas of deficiencies. And certainly this company, it is a flagship company, and I must put on the table as well that it is critical for the survival of this company that we have all our systems up and running, because we do have a bond outside there, and any signals that there are problems in the company pertaining to these issues, those things will have implications for our bond security.
Madam Chair, I am not satisfied that this company, under your chairmanship, has taken the bull by the horns on this matter. We would be requesting, as a result of the lethargy exercised by this company, that the 18 egregious breaches to the company's own policies that took place and that was manifested in this report that was submitted to the company since December of 2016. We don't know as a committee whether the problems may have multiplied. We don't know how many new breaches would have occurred because there has been no internal audit since this last report was submitted on the 30th of June 2015. So what we would like to request of you is a fresh internal audit report to be submitted to this committee from the 1st of July to the 31st of December 2017. Because the company apparently is not taking its tasks and responsibility seriously. And therefore we, as the watchdogs of the public purse, have to take responsibility for this matter. And I take no pride and joy in saying that I am totally dissatisfied with what I have been told, and this committee have been told this morning, about the very lackadaisical approach taken by this company to employ an internal auditor. 15 months after, you are now telling us, Madam Chair, that in April we may have one. There's no guarantee we will have one in April. Madam Chair, I now ask the distinguished member, Sister Jennifer Baptiste-Primus, to take the floor.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman, and morning again to everyone. I would like to start by saying that given the fact that you informed us, Madam Chair, that the new board was appointed in June 2017, and you have sought to put systems in place, I want to keep the focus on accountability, and through you to the former chairman of the board and the CEO. I have sat here and I have listened quite attentively to the responses that you have given so far, Mr. CEO. You play a very critical role in the organization. You're directly responsible for the organization's operations, day-to-day operations, in collaboration with the Chief Financial Officer. I was a bit taken aback, Mr. CEO, when you shared with this committee the fact that you took the decision not to bring to the attention of the new board and the new chairman of the board a critical document as this, titled Internal Audit Report of Trinidad Generation Unlimited Procurement Process. You have to be careful about cloaking yourself in authority that you do not have. Your responsibility as the CEO of such a flagship company, a new board coming in place, you have a grave responsibility to prepare a brief, a detailed brief for the chairman and the board members of all the issues facing the organization. And of course, this report should have been at the top of the list. So that I really want to disagree with the approach you have taken and to discourage you from engaging in such practice. Because, in fact, what you are doing is manipulating what information should go before the board, and thereby, by your action, would deprive the board of critical information that could lead the board in making informed decisions in the best interest of the company. Having said that, you informed this committee that the premise upon which you failed to inform the chair and the board of the existence of this report until last month was, as you stated, many of the weaknesses identified in this report have been addressed. Could you share with this committee at least 2 or 3 of those weaknesses that you, in your capacity as the CEO, addressed?
You could just put on your mic, sir.
Okay, with respect to unsigned documents, we have modified the approval process and the centralization of approvals within the Maximo asset management system. For tender document discrepancies, a new management tenders committee and updated process was enforced with approvals at all stages of the process prior to the issue of a purchase order. With respect to reconciliation of sign-off discrepancies, we have updated and enforced all procurement transactions being done through the asset management system with the enforced attendance system controls. With respect to payment voucher and wire transfer documents not appropriately signed, all payment processes have been updated and new checklists and controls are in place to ensure alignment with the procurement and approval processes.
Mr. CEO, I am sitting here and still waiting to hear you address the critical issue of the internal auditor. And I would also like you, Mr. Dandrade, am I pronouncing your name correctly, Dandrade or Dandrade?
D'Andrade.
D'Andrade. Mr. D'Andrade, you were the former chairman of the board. Having read this report, did you and your board not think it necessary to implement that critical decision to employ an internal auditor This is a multi-billion-dollar organization. How could it not have an internal auditor? The report indicated that that was critical. Why didn't your board implement that critical decision that was recommended?
One of the things that we're not seeing there is that there was an internal audit committee of the board that initiated this audit, and at their findings, we went out to get auditors, external auditors, to do a detailed study. So that detailed study came from the fact that we were monitoring via the board committee what was going on in internal audit. When we got the effort was made to correct the problem. And I think the CEO was the person who was assigned that task and could go into great detail of what has been done and how it has been achieved. So we were not sitting down and waiting for anything to happen. We were acting to correct what we saw as a problem in the procurement systems. One of the things that we face as a board is that in January 2011, we were given the task to build an organization to manage this company. And we had 3 months in which to prepare to do it. There are some areas that we had to focus on, which was the operation and the maintenance part of it. The others we did put in systems, but of course in the time frame, everything was tight. And therefore the board audit committee was the one that we used. We also have to remember that up until 2013, that all the controls and systems were being provided by the minority shareholder, who was the one that was managing the project in the beginning. So yes, I agree that this wasn't what we would have liked to have, but we did take action once we found out to correct it.
And having listened to you, one must give credit to the committee. But then if the critical recommendation coming out of that process was to ensure that an internal auditor was brought into the organization and the board failed to address that critical issue, then the question could be asked, how better off is the organization before and after?
Well,
what was the purpose of bringing the company on board to do the assessment? Not to make the organization a little more efficient, I would say?
I agree, but the objective, whether we had one on board or we bring in somebody, was to get audits done. And at the time, it was debated whether we should have someone full-time or whether we should have contracted service. And we were dependent at that point on the audit committee to continue their role in monitoring what was happening while we sort out the problem of how we're going to deal with the internal audit. There were many other issues occurring at the time. So while we focus in here on what's happening with audit, there were many other issues occurring in the company at the time, and you were constrained by the amount of limited time that you had to do any of these things. In a greenfield plant, the system and processes would have started when the construction began. We should have started this in 2009. We started it in 2011, 3 months before the plant was due to be handed over to us.
And while this committee, I'm quite sure, would agree with the challenges that you would have faced, and credit must be given to your committee, I am not satisfied that having the report in hand, that focus was not placed on the critical recommendation made. I am not satisfied on that. But Mr. Chairman, if you permit me, Madam Chair, your board having taken the decision to When would the advertisement for the internal auditor, what is the time frame for the advertising of the position? What's the time frame for actually securing the services of this person?
The advertisement is expected to go out by next week at the latest. And we're hoping with the recruitment process, we should be able to have that process completed by mid.
You should repeat it for the benefit of persons who are listening, because they would have missed it.
Sorry about that. It is expected that the advertisement will go out by next week because the board has signed off on the 2 positions of one compliant officer and the other internal auditor. And we're hoping that the process will be completed by the earliest by the first week in April or so, just because they are just 2 positions. And we are hoping that before the end of April, we would have somebody on board. But we have taken note of the committee's request to have that internal audit done, and this is something that we would probably, at the board, try and see if we can contract contract in that service right away to have that audit process start right away.
I would suggest to the board also 2 other positions that are critical. I mean, we are all aware that the procurement legislation is imminent, would be proclaimed. Therefore, in preparation of that piece of legislation, is there provision for bringing a procurement officer, a contracts officer on board in the organization?
Well, there are positions there. Certainly, we have noted that with the new procurement legislation, there are certain kind of skill set that you would require. And we have taken on board that recommendation, and we are going to try and get that right away, that position right away. As well, we want to be able to have a resident legal person on board. So.
Thank you, Chairman.
Madam Chairman, I am looking at the structure that was provided for TGU. First of all, has TGU ever had a strategic plan?
Yes, it did.
For what period?
I think initially, as I mentioned before, we were given this task to build out an organization with 3 months, and normally that would have taken 2 years. It's unfortunate that it happened that way, but that is what it was. So our focus up until the time that we bought out the minority shareholder was to get the plant up and running. Otherwise, the penalties financially would have been very severe. So our focus was to build the organization, get the system operating, and it was after 2013 when we bought out the minority shareholder that then we started focusing on other aspects of the company. But the focus initially was to get the system up. We were caught between satisfying the demands of the PPA and monitoring the contract. And with the contract going late, we were facing serious issues.
Could you tell us, for the benefit of the listening public, what PPA means?
Oh, the PPA is the Power Purchase Agreement with TNTech, and there were certain conditions in there that we had to meet. There were conditions that were occurring in the construction. They were already 6 months late, and if you exceed a certain limit, then the whole project is at risk. So while we focus in here on our systems, those were the points that were big risks to the company and to the finances of the company. And in 2013, where you're looking at legal fees, we had to take the contractor to the DAB to fight for $106 million. So it isn't that there weren't other risks. The focus on the risk now is what the board, the new board, is looking at. But at the time that we were there, the focus was on the risks proposed by our failure to meet the power purchase agreement and by the contractor not completing his job within a time frame that wouldn't destroy the PPA. And you're talking, as I said, on the liquidated damages that we are looking at is over 100 million US.
Mr. Former Chairman, I would have understand the company's concerns then. But, I mean, for the benefit of the committee and the listening public, I am finding it very difficult to understand that a company that treats with millions, if not billions of dollars, would have been operating for all of this time without a strategic plan. Because then it begs the question, what would have guided the operations of the company? Yes, you would have had those critical things to deal with, but post-2013, what has this company been using to guide its operations? And the reason it becomes even more critical for me is that I'm looking at your structure, and normally your strategy will determine your structure. And this structure suggests to me that it is not really appropriate for the company. And that is why I need to understand, and the committee needs to understand, what is the company's strategy and how did you come up with this structure for the organization?
The basic structure there is for the operation of TGU. Anything beyond the operation of TGU will come through UEEGCL. And at the UEEGCL level, our strategy was for a question of expanding, and I think in our strategic plan, you would have listed the efforts that we were going to do at the UEEGCL level. So that organization is supposed to be ring-fenced as TGU, and the UEEGCL would have TGU as a base from which it could develop its other system.
Okay, but I'm looking at the structure here, and I'm seeing vacant. Okay, we would have dealt at length with internal audit, that is a mystery of biblical proportions to me, that an organization like TG would have not had an internal audit function. But you also look, we didn't have compliance, we do not have a finance team lead, we do not have the person responsible for logistics, we do not have a chief financial officer. Those positions are vacant, and I'm going based on what was submitted here. And this structure was signed off on in November of 2016. So I noted the chairman just indicated that they have now approved for those internal audit and compliance positions to be filled. But as early as November 2016, this structure was approved. So how do you justify to this committee and to the public that having approved these positions in 2016, we are now in March 2018, they have not even been advertised? These are positions that must be considered critical to any organization, particularly a state enterprise that is responsible for billions of dollars. So the committee and the public needs to understand what has happened, what went on. Why have these positions remained vacant so long?
In the initial arrangement, and I said up to till 2013, all those functions that you see in there would have been performed outside of Trinidad by the AES Corporation. It was not until we had the decision from the government at that point in time, in 2014, that we would then be in a position to start looking at something beyond just operating the facility. And it is that informed that document. But then in 2015, we were asked to go out and raise funds to pay back the government. Our focus at that point in time was to do that. So there were other things happening that prevented us from filling those positions as quickly as we would have liked to. But we recognized that we had to do it once the minority shareholder had been bought out. We now had to take all the business functions that he was supposed to be doing. And we could not do it until we had decided the road forward from the government.
I am still not sure that you have that because you do not have a strategic plan, but we would leave that for now. Earlier on, in response to a question concerning the corporate secretary the suggestion was the person is on contract. Are we speaking here contract of service or for service? Is the corporate secretary, although being on contract, considered an employee or a contractor?
No, I don't think he's considered as an employee.
So all of these positions that we have here that are noted as contract, are all of those individuals contractors and not employees of TGU?
Where we had contract, they're contracted through a company. So they would be working for TGU, but they would have been contracted through a company.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad that we reached to that point because one of the matters I wanted to address. Chairman, could you give us a little more information in relation to which of the senior employees, well, I'm not sure whether I should call them employees now or contractors, which of those positions are being operated in the manner just explained by the former chairman? In senior management, which of those positions are being operated in the manner just explained by the chairman? That is to say, not an employee, but a contractor or company contracted providing that position.
Member, none currently. Only the corporate secretary we have contracted all that service. All the others are employees of TGU.
Okay. In the report, in the audit report, and the issues or the summary of issues identified several shortcomings. Can I ask if, as a result, when these situations existed, whether the board had the occasion to initiate any investigation relating to corruption or allegations of corruption, or if any, and if so, if any action would have been taken against any employee as a result?
No, we didn't initiate any investigation for corruption. Most of the purchase orders at those times were for parts for the plant. We were buying parts because we were late and we had to have parts if we were going to achieve the reliability requested by the power purchase agreement of 93%. So the bulk of that, in fact, in the sample we took, over 60% of what was there would have been parts that we bought. It is easy to check that the part that was ordered is in the warehouse.
Mr. Budram, how long have you been with TGU?
I've been with TGU since May of 2011.
And before becoming CEO, what position did you occupy?
I was plant manager.
Chairman, that's it for now.
I just wanted to clarify, Madam Chair. What's the name of the company of the corporate secretary? Because we understand he's now a contractor operating through a company. Could you identify the name of the company that the corporate secretary operates through?
Certainly, Chair. I would ask Mr. Anthony here to be able to give the information to you, please.
Mr. Anthony, could you share with us what is the name of that company?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yes, Renovatio, attorneys at law.
Okay, that's the name of the company. All right, thank you. Can you tell us if this particular company that you have identified for us has provided any services to to the Union Estate or TGU over the past years, that is under review, 2008 to 2015. Could you share with us whether this particular company that you have identified as the contractor company would have provided services, legal, professional services over that period of time?
Mr. Chairman, yes. In 2011, I was advised that there was a major discussion at the board whether they would hire or they will not hire. I was also advised the reason why, but I'm not sure it's for this committee. And so the decision was taken to hire as an outsourced contractor. And I was hired to provide corporate and legal services.
Would you want to share with this committee? So the period in question that you would have been engaged as a company to provide legal and professional services would have been between, let's say, 2011 to 2015, or would it have been before?
It would have been from 2011.
2011.
Yes. Prior to that, the services was provided by a law firm.
A law firm, okay. You want to share with us the figures that I quoted earlier? Would that be part of the legal and professional fees that would have been paid, or would it have been a portion? Or would you want to share with us, from your recollection, what would have been the actual sum the company would have received during the period under review that you have identified, 2011 to the current time? Or would you prefer to detail for us in writing the total in terms of the year?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I was going to suggest to you that it's best it go in writing, because it wouldn't have been my services alone.
Yes.
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 So we'll break it down.
Yes, all right. All right. I also would like to ask, as we are on the subject of outsourcing, whether the chairman is in a position to help this committee to guide us as the total costs incurred through the outsourcing of the auditing firm, the internal auditing firm. Grant is Thornton Orbit Solutions to engage in the internal audit function for the period 2013 to 2015. Do we have an appreciation of what is the amount that would have been paid to this particular firm? And do we have an idea as to the procurement process that would have been employed to recruit this firm?
Chair, with respect to the cost, we beg your indulgence to submit it in writing to you. With respect to the procurement process, I would ask my colleague, former chairman, to respond to that, please.
Yeah, thank you.
At 2011, in terms of the procurement of legal services, AES was still in charge of those functions. Mr. Anthony had worked on the project through a different company, and therefore AES was agreement to hire Mr. Anthony for that purpose.
So this particular company, you're saying that, first of all, Madam Chair, you're going to provide us in writing of the total cost. Yes. And as it relates to the recruitment process, this would have happened when AES would have had total control of the company during the material point in time that this firm was recruited.
I think I was responding to a different contract. We would have engaged Grant Thornton subsequent to the purchase of the minority shares in which the government became the sole shareholder. And in that case, we were looking for a well-established company to do this because whatever audit we would have done, we would have wanted it to be as thorough as possible. And Grant Thornton was the one that we selected.
Was that on a sole selective basis?
Well, EY was doing for us other audits. So we didn't want to have the same person doing two things.
Mr. Delandrad, could you share with us the name of the audit that Ernst & Young would have been conducted at the material point in time?
It was the financial audits they did. They did the financial audit.
For what period?
For TGU.
For what period?
They did it all.
Chair, if I could assist, the Ernst & Young has been the financial auditors doing the annual financial audit of TGU from the time of acquisition of the AES shareholding. So from 2013 forward to present day.
Can make a copy of that report available?
Yes.
To the committee.
Thank you
very much. Your current staff at the company exactly is about what now, Madam Chair? 68.
68.
Right.
It's an 88.
And the bulk of those people would be permanent employees.
Yes.
And so you're here to share with us how many are permanent, how many are on contract, how many are casual, how many are short-term in terms of employment?
Could I give you that in writing as well? Or if not, I can ask the Chief Operating Officer to just run through very quickly for us.
Yes, maybe the Chief Operating Officer can help us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair and committee, we've already discussed the contractual engagement of the corporate secretary. All other positions are permanent staff positions, the majority of the 68. There is one item on the org chart, if I can direct you. It's almost exactly in the middle to the bottom. It's a box called Power Plant Trainees, Engineers and Techs. That is a trainee program. So those are the only staff that are, for want of a better term, quote-unquote contract. So that's a rotating training program where we expose young qualified people to support and learn and create a pool of operators for us to access. All other positions, the majority of the 68, are permanent positions.
Madam Chair, could you tell us if there is any intention at this time, from your knowledge, to dispose of the assets of this company to any local, foreign, or a combination of both interests?
It's not, from my knowledge, we don't have that on the table at present.
I also observed that in terms of your strategic business objectives, you identified to grow market share not only in TNT, but in the wider Caribbean region, and increase and diversify your revenue streams as another business objective, strategic business objective. Could you tell us how successful the company has been in achieving these two strategic business objectives thus far, to increase and diversify its revenue streams and to grow its market share in TNT and the wider Caribbean region? You want to share with this committee how successful the company has been in achieving any of these objectives?
Chair, it's still a work in progress. With respect to the revenue stream and the strategic intent of growing the market, we are currently working as well with the investment division, because the corporation, so we are guided by that, ministry, to really and truly come up with strategic business plan to really treat with these issues. Currently, our major focus, as we have said before, was accessing revenue to pay off, to repay the government its investment. This board, we are going into a strategic planning session, and we are looking at ways and means that we can recommend to the investment division possibilities. We have talked about those things at, informally, but we want to go through a strategic planning session. It is our expectation that within this month that we can start, we should be able to conclude those discussions so that we can send forward a concrete proposal to the Ministry of Finance. Now, with respect to the wider Caribbean region and growing and so on, our major focus was really on truly building the capacity and competency within TGU so that it can really and truly stand up and be that beacon that we want it to be. We saw opportunities as well that we can be able to partner with other regions, countries who may have power plants and may want us to be able to treat with other kinds of energies that we should be able to deal with. But as it is right now, our major focus is really on building TGU. And the investment portfolio, we are looking at it, and that would be a major part of our strategic planning process and a major outcome that we are expecting to achieve shortly.
And may I ask that you submit in writing to this committee a list of all the permanent employees, the names of these individuals, their qualifications and experience, and their respective compensation packages. We'd like to have that in writing.
Certainly.
Yeah. I think Mr. Small would like to, Mr. Hines, and then Mr. Small.
That having sat in these chairs over time, conducting this important oversight work, we have had some experiences. Some of those experiences have led some of us, or at least let me speak for me, to arrive at certain predispositions. One of mine is that there are many agencies and entities in this country all established with very noble intentions, they have become in some ways runaway horses, and they generate more trouble and more bleeding, especially in times of economic stringency as we have now, as we have to live with now. We miss the dollars that we wasted. So we have, for my part, some predispositions, and we are determined, all of us, to assist Trinidad and Tobago in ironing out those rocks to make sure that going forward we all benefit from what she offers, Trinidad and Tobago, in a fair and transparent and equitable way. Now, if, as we heard earlier, the position of corporate secretary is seated with a service provider, contractor, and if I have a company, my main focus will be my company, not your own, even as a service provider. I'm not saying that I will not have concerns for you, but it is a very human condition to be concerned about your own. And therefore, I just wonder to myself, maybe you could put this one in writing. It's a little bit sticky. Maybe you could put this in writing, whether a service provider should be sitting in the chair here today before our committee in the context of which you told us. I'm not sure, but we'll take that one in writing. Given that it is not an employee of the company accounting to us here today. Now, I have noticed in your consolidated financials as at December 31st, 2015, and I'm going deliberately slowly so you can pick the page up. And I'm looking in particular at page 30, top right-hand corner, it's numbered. So I'm looking at the consolidated figures under the rubric operating expense. And the backdrop that I set in terms of the way these entities in our country, state entities, have managed affairs is where I'm coming at. When I look at, for example, the 2015, insofar as contract services are concerned, I see that the figure for 2015 is 3.5 million US, as opposed to the 2014 figure of 1.62 million US. It more than doubled from year to year. I take it that the contract service providers, the services, that the cost for their services would be included in this. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yes.
I am correct.
Yes.
Yes. So it more than doubled between 2014 and 2015. Could someone give me a small indication as to why that would be so?
Member, if I may, could you repeat again for us, please?
Yes, I am talking about your accounts, consolidated accounts.
Yes.
In US dollars at item number 20 in the notes, notes to the account. Explanatory notes. The third item is contract services. Are you with me?
Yes.
And I noticed that that figure of 3.533, well, 3.5 plus million in US dollars, that more than doubled the amount for 2014. I would like, if practicable, to be told now what might have accounted for that significant increase.
Member, Mr. Chinapu would answer that for me, please.
And while there's a little hiatus between your communication and his answer, he must add as well, what sort of contracted services are we talking about? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair and committee. And I will ask for assistance from the technical side from Mr. DeAndrade and Mr. Boudram, but on the financial side, I can start by first explaining the services. Under this operating expense section, we're dealing very specifically with plant operating contracted services. So the services that you would have here would not be administrative contractive services. And in the year 2015 versus 2014, we did have a number of planned maintenance activities, as well as one or two unplanned maintenance activities that were required. Many of these maintenance exercises require both local and foreign consultants who certify the equipment and the parts and certify that we could put the equipment back into service. So the increase, the doubling that we are seeing is primarily based on both the planned and unplanned. This is done at TGU on a long-term scheduled maintenance plan, which if the committee requires, we can also submit in writing, but we actually have the annual planned outages that would have accounted for the increase in these services.
So I take it that the administrative expense, contract expenses would have been taken up in item 2, contract labor. Just above contract services, since you say those were more about plant and equipment.
Yes, member, we do have to apologize again for the fact that you're missing a page which I have in the official audited accounts, but the page before where the other member mentioned the administrative expense breakdown,
yes,
that would have all of the costs associated with any administrative.
So we do not have that before something went wrong?
Yes, with the communication. But
I was about to ask, perhaps mischievously, for some comfort that it was not deliberate, but let's leave that for the time being. Now, in respect of the going a little lower down in the operating expense, I would like to get a sense, because the entire operating expense package moved from 6.3 US million in 2014 to 10 million, 10.193 million in 2015. A substantial increase. Well, you have just explained what happened in terms of the contract services. So let us look specifically. And I want to move over to the question of security. 2013, in your consolidated figure, in the realm of security, in 2013 it was 294,000. It went to 270,000, all in US, in 2014. And in 2015, it went to 568,000. So between 2013 and 2015, one might say it almost doubled. What might account for that? Security.
Maybe I'll ask the CEO to account for that.
Yes, thank you.
Chairman, we'll have to get the details and get back to you on that one. I don't have the details offhand on that.
All right. That would be it for the time being. Thank you.
Yes, I think Mr. Small.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to get a second opportunity to join in. I've been listening very, very intently to what's been going on. Mr. DeAndrade, I've listened intently to a lot of your responses. And I understand at the time, I understand that at the time there was a construction focus of the company. You had a PPA with certain target deadlines to be ready to run. And the company, your focus, am I correct in saying your focus was really on meeting those deadlines, making sure that you meet those financial and operational targets?
Yes, it was that, but we also had at the same time the contractor or the construction taking place. So we were between the ultimate buyer of the product with the PPA, while at the same time we had to be working to ensure that we dealt properly with the contractor so that we don't incur owner-caused delays.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that, Mr. DeAndre? What would have led to your board commission? Because and I go back to this audit. This audit has a specific, we keep talking about this audit, but this audit was specific to the procurement process. It didn't speak about a general audit, financial audit. So that something had to have happened, I am thinking logically, that would have led to the commissioning of an audit on the procurement process, not a general audit of all of the various compliance issues in the company. So I'm trying to get from you. You would have been the chairman at this time. What would have led, or would have caused the board to realize that perhaps we need to do an audit on the procurement process of the company?
Yes.
Okay. As I mentioned before, the audit committee of the board did a preliminary audit of the system.
The audit committee did a preliminary audit?
Yes, they did.
That is not possible, Mr. DeAndre.
The audit committee of the board?
The audit committee of the board receives reports from the internal audit function. The audit committee can't do an audit.
We did not have...
So you're saying that the internal audit committee of the board had the capability to conduct an internal audit?
Yes, they did do a review, if you want to call it a review instead of an audit. They did a review looking at a number of the purchase orders that were issued. And on the basis of that, we were then advised that we should do a detailed audit of the systems. And we chose procurement as the system which we believe would have had the most risk. So it wasn't that we knew there was anything. It was the system that we thought that we would have investigated because it may have the most risk.
I just want to be clear, Mr. DeAndre, because this is on the record. You are saying that the audit committee went down into the trenches into the document and did this, and did a review.
They selected a number of orders and did a review.
I hear what you're saying, and it's interesting, but it's on the record, and if that is your recollection, I'm going to work with it. I would suggest to you that that is not the function of an audit committee. An audit committee is not supposed to be down in the invoices. If the audit committee recognizes there's a problem, you should have engaged an internal auditor.
Well,
that is what the audit committee should have done. But I'll stop there on that. Let me ask a different question, Mr. DeAndre. What is your training, your background?
Electrical engineering.
Electrical engineering. So you understand the issues with process plants pretty well. You have
Yes, I work on an ammonia plant.
What would you say, is it normal in a process plant for administrative expenses to be higher than operational expenses?
My familiarity with the ammonia process is that the administrative pressures would be less. I don't know the details of what they're looking at.
Well, I don't know. I am not an engineer, for the record. I have a good handle on process plant operations. And I have noted that the administrative expenses of the TGU, UEEGCL operations are higher than the operating expenses of the plant. You have 68 employees, as told by the chair, and I gather the bulk of those employees would be actual people physically manipulating and keeping the plant going. So when you look at just the way the line items are packaged, but how the line items present here, that it shows that the administrative expenses are higher than the operating expenses of the plant. And I want to be clear that the operating expenses include contract labor and other contracted services. So it's not even, you can say, well, labor is part of the admin expenses. So I just want to get you as a professional in the business would you say that that is something that you say was unusual?
In the difference in what you may see in the ammonia plant, for example, and this plant, is that on the operating expenses, you would have the cost of gas.
Yeah.
The gas to this facility is supplied and is responsible for by TNTech. So really and truly, what you're looking at in terms of a major cost is not included in operating expenses because we don't have responsibility for it.
Well, my logic is simple. You have 68 staff. The vast majority, probably, let's say 70% of those numbers are actual operators, systems admin. When you look at the amount of admin staff, the admin staff is relatively a small complement of that 68. Yet, it's the admin expenses are significantly higher than. So I'm going to stop with you, Mr. DeAndre. I'm not going to press you on that, but I think something needs looking at, Madam Chair. We need to go into the company and delve into these numbers because something is not correct to that. And even if you, and I agree that the cost of the major inputs, your major inputs, natural gas to drive the plants, it would be a normal operating expense, but because of the variation of the TNTech, I understand that. But if you strip that number out, I think if you go to pretty much any process plant, you look and see what the admin expenses are as opposed to the operating expenses. Even if you strip out the cost of the major input, you would find, in my experience, that the admin expenses tend to be lower, quite a bit lower than the operating expense. So something is, and I'm suggesting that something is awry. Something is awry in the business model, in the structure of the company that perhaps, Madam Chair, I'm sharing. I'm not going to ask for anybody to respond, but I'm suggesting that is something that probably requires a deeper dive at the way in which the company is currently structured, or probably just the way in which you present the numbers. But the way the numbers represent suggests to me that something is wrong. And seriously wrong, because in a couple of those years, you had admin expenses double the cost of operating expenses. So I don't get it. I don't see how that could be going on. Something is wrong. I'm not going to press. It's an observation that I'm sharing as someone who's looking at your accounts and the way in which it's presented, and I'm sharing it with you, and I'm giving you the benefit of my 1 or 2 years experience in the business and understanding how things work. Now, I just want to have one final follow-up, Mr. Chairman, because I know we're probably running close on time. And I want to go back. Mr. DeAndre, I'm going back to you, but in a different context. When you listened earlier to the response of the CEO, that all of these findings by the auditor, was your board presented with a report that all of these findings? So, for example, I want to draw again, because perhaps, when you look at the details, on page 20 of the internal audit report, it refers to, I checked it, over 120 instances of check payment vouchers either not having the signature of the person who prepared it, they didn't have the approval for what the auditor is saying, checks were prepared, I didn't see the signature for the person who prepared it, I didn't see the approval for the check to be prepared, or the signature, the preparer could not be identified. And you have over 120 instances here by the auditor from a sample. Remember, the auditor is going in there and pulling a sample, 5, max 10% of the transactions. So if the internal auditor can find 120 plus instances here from a sample, it suggests to me that this was probably well organized and orchestrated. Because if the auditor found 1 or 2 examples, but 120. So that I want to find out from you, Mr. DeAndre. The CEO indicated that all of these systems have been fixed. Everything has been fixed. Was that presented to your board that these matters have been treated with, and all of the remedial actions to stop these things from happening have occurred? Was this presented to you?
We don't have a formal report, but we do know that we had actioned it and that action was being taken, but I don't have a formal report saying that all the issues were resolved.
Well, if it's not written, then it doesn't exist. I have to ask the question because I don't understand how you could engage an auditor. You're the chairman of the board. You found your audit committee went into the invoices. I'm going back. You found issues that required someone external to look at it. You said, this is the outcome. You pass it to ECU, action. And ECU did not provide a written report to the board? That's what you're saying?
No, we didn't get a written report.
Well, again, this is why this committee is troubled, Mr. DeAndre and Madam Chair. I mean, this would have predated your tenure, but these are issues that troubles the committee. Because this one in particular is really bad. Checks are being churned out, and nobody knows what they're for, who's signing them, who's approving them. And this is a sample. I want to press on that. Yes. This is just a sample, because the auditors come in, so that it suggests that it's widespread across the enterprise, across the transactions of the company. So it gets us uncomfortable. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to stop here because I suspect that something else may need to happen.
Before I come to my own, based on the submission made by my colleague, Mr. Small, is the CEO prepared to accept his submission that being a sample, it seems widespread, it seems treacherous? Would you agree with that?
That, I'll have to check to see,
Yes, it's checks he's talking about, but he was talking about CHEQUE. You have to CHECK.
That,
You heard his submission?
Yes, I did.
Are you as troubled as I am? I mean, I want to get a sense now. The public is listening.
It is disturbing.
Yeah.
And as I said, we put things in place.
And you have been there overseeing all of this as CEO. This brings me to another point. Madam Chair, we have this structure here that my colleague, Madam Sherry-Ann Critchlow-Kerban, spoke sensibly about earlier. You have the copy of the you have a copy of the structure in front of you. I drew a line just below and straight across on the left-hand side, Chief Financial Officer. I folded the page there. In other words, I'm treating with what is above from the level of Chief Financial Officer. Are you with me, Madam Chair? With the exception of the Board of Directors, and with the exception of the driver general assistant, we would like in writing an indication as to the cost for the service or the cost of these services, whether employed by you or contracted by you. So I hope you are with me. With the exception of the Board of Directors on that chart, and with the exception of the bottom right driver general assistant, we would like to see how well these the elements of the top echelon of the company are being compensated. That includes, of course, the CEO, who 3 times today couldn't help us immediately. He has to check. While all of these very dangerous things have been happening for a very long time, we would like to know that so that the public will know how well they are being paid and how well they are managing this important state institution. 1. I now come specifically to, and I now have before me the breakout of the administrative expenses at note number 17 in the 2014 consolidated accounts, and I am specifically at page 29 thereof. And to remind myself that whatever figures we quote here is to be quoted in US dollars. Are you with me? We are on the same page? Thank you. So I work my way down the list at item 17 expense things. I see here, might seem small but important because we are talking about internal auditing and the absence thereof. Inexplicable absence, according to my friend, biblical proportions. The item of entertainment, small, 2013, 1,000, 2014, 3,000. But lower down, I see Meals and entertainment, $52,000 in 2013, and nothing for 2014. All of these matters, we want some kind of written explanation on it. I'm raising it. We see a column for a line for entertainment above, and now another line, meals and entertainment below, $52,000 US. Right? Events and community work, a jump from $606,000 US in 2013 to $854,000 US in 2014. So it's obvious that the company is engaged in some community work and so on. Members of Parliament might be happy to know that, and we will learn a little bit about it when you tell us what that involves and so on. I go a little bit down the page. Well, we have dealt with the legal and professional issues. Some questions are coming on that. I want specifically to look at salaries and wages. Salaries and wages. I take it that this will not include contract services. Am I correct, Mr. COO?
Yes, Member, you're correct.
Good, and I have noticed, given that your staff is now about 68 persons, Madam Chair, that in 2013, salaries and wages moved seamlessly from 4.3 million to 5 million US. I would like, this committee would like to know what was responsible for that significant, seamless jump. And finally, on the business of traveling, in 2013, it was 332,000, and it was in 2014, 532,000, and I do not have the benefit of the 2015 figure because that page is missing from the notes. So we would like to learn a little bit about that. And while we are talking 2013 and 2014, we've often repeated here, Mr. Chairman, this is one of the difficulties we have when we have to look at these things ex post facto. It really makes little sense talking in 2018. And those listening to us, the public to whom we account, they must be saying, but they're crazy. They're talking about 2013 and 2014. I wasn't born yet. Some of them would say that. So I would like an explanation as to these things as I give way to the chairman to continue.
Thank you very much. I have a few areas to clarify, and then we will bring down the curtains on today's proceedings if no other colleague would want to intervene. Madam Chair, we have seen that there appears to be not only on the basis of any assumptions, but on the basis of generated facts by an internal audit report, that there has been a breakdown in the internal control system within this company. The parent company has no internal audit function, and the subsidiary is rudderless. I am in possession of a memo which was addressed to your good self as chairman from PKF,
management letter.
A management letter, in which they pointed out certain challenges facing the company. They talked about bank reconciliations unsigned and undated by preparer. They talk about bank reconciliations unsigned, undated by reviewer. They talk about non-maintenance of the double entry system of posting. Now, This arose out of observations arising out of the period December 31st, 2011 to 2015. Now, I want to ask you, given your the audit committee of the board, having received these things and observations, and in the absence of a internal fraud policy, coupled with all of the deficiencies identified, the 18 deficiencies identified in the internal audit report, what measures have you proposed to have these things rectified in that organization? Because we have been told by the CEO that some of these things have been addressed, but we are also conscious of the fact that you are still without an internal auditor, which you have said by the end of April ought to be corrected. So these developments must generate some concern to you as the chairman. Yes?
Yes, Chairman. From the board's perspective, having reviewed the document and seen where we are, we have seen it necessary to start doing an overall review of the management structure within the organization. We are trying as far as possible, as it relates to internal audit, to give that dedicated attention. The issue, we know that we have to get an internal audit position statement and a report for the period that is not covered by the last internal auditor. What, as the board, we are going to try very dedicatedly to ensure that we have the internal audit system up to mark, make sure that we have the necessary staff recruited, train in particular, and more importantly, pay attention to the whole procurement system. The Ministry of Finance as well, with its central audit capability, we are going to see as far as possible how we can rely on that ministry and that division to be able to assist us in improving the internal audit system at TGO with respect to consultancy or how best we can move forward. And at UEEGCL, we will try as far as possible to ensure, because we don't have the activities at that organization aren't many, but we rely heavily on the external auditor to really do our audit. The board has control over there, and we are going to pay attention to ensuring that we, both at the company level and or subsidiary, that we have a robust internal audit system in operation.
You know, one of the issues identified in the internal audit report is issue number 14, and it talks about check payment vouchers did not have signatures, as my colleague alluded to earlier. But it's interesting to refer to the implication given to us by the auditors. And I quote, the auditor says that our findings above indicate non-compliance with sections 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3 of the procure to pay policy and procedures, as a significant number of CPV/WT support were not approved in accordance with the policy. As such, the company may pay for goods and services that were not received, not authorized, and or not completed. So we have a situation at this company where all kinds of activities could have been taking place and have been taking place. And you have indicated you don't have a fraud policy And further, you are guided by the relevant legislation. I don't know which legislation you were referring to, but clearly there is a serious challenge that that company faces at this time. And because of the absence of any sanctions or penalties, things are allowed to go unpunished. And the taxpayers of this country are the ones who suffer. Because, as Mr. Small has asked earlier, we need to get a value to all the losses that we would have experienced in monies lost to the taxpayers as a result of these 18 deficiencies. And the mere fact that no one has been held accountable, no penalties have been proffered against anyone, it is business as usual. And it can be going on right now without your knowledge. We have to put an end to this. And it seems that there's a breakdown in the oversight rules. And Madam Permanent Secretary, Investments Division, I think that you'll have to, your unit have to really get on top, a little more on top of that responsibility of oversight, because there's too much looseness at these state enterprise levels, and the country and the taxpayers and the population are paying a heavy price because of a lackadaisical approach that we have to these matters. And I hope that there would be a more rigid and robust oversight responsibility role for the Ministry of Finance and the Permanent Secretary in particular in this regard. And I just want to say finally that there's an absence of any risk management policy in this company. And I would like the chairman to tell this committee what actions and steps are being taken to address this lacuna in the system.
Chair and members, the board has, there are risk management policies and plans as they relate to the operations, but we don't have a coordinated plan. We have asked the Chief Operating Officer to actually work to get a risk plan, and working with the CEO as well, to submit to the board so that we can sign off on the risk plan, management plan.
Yeah, I understand that you don't have a single document that comprehensively captures all areas of risk in the organization, along with the relevant policies and procedures. Can you give this committee an undertaking that you will address this matter within the shortest order? And could you give us a specific time frame when you'll have a single document that would capture comprehensively all areas of risk management in the organization? We need to get a time frame to tighten up on these matters.
Sure. Chair and members, we have a commitment to have the policy finalized in 1 month's time. And all these things are in keeping with our overall strategic review of the organization and the strategic planning process that we talked about, because there are a number of policies that we know that we need to put in place, and we are seeking to get those things done very quickly.
Within 1 month's time, we will expect a copy of that document to reach us, because we want to get a copy of that. And could you tell us what has happened to the 2016 and 2017 financial audited accounts for this organization? They are not before us. That is why we have to stop at 2015.
We have submitted the 2016 audited financial report, and we have just completed the 2017, so very soon the committee will have these reports.
So the 2016 is where? Where is that financial report right now?
Finance.
Is it at the Ministry of Finance?
Yes.
Is it at the Ministry of Finance?
Yes.
Yes, we have it.
Okay. And Madam PS, in terms of the 2017, you have any idea where we are with that?
Chairman, if I may, according to the manual, the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual, they have 4 months after the year end to submit it to the corporation's whole. So we have some time in terms of 2017 accounts.
Okay. But in terms of 2016, when could we expect it to be formally tabled in the House of Representatives?
Once the company calls the AGM, subsequent to that, we'll submit the accounts to the committee.
When is the company going to call its AGM? Because this thing has been outstanding.
We have written them last month and I think 3 months ago. And so we are still waiting for them to submit the notices for the AGM.
Who is to submit this notice?
The corporate secretary of the company.
Corporate secretary, you are a contractor and you are an employer in an indirect form. Could you tell this committee when this matter will be addressed? Because we need to get the 2016 report before the Parliament.
So we have two different rules. So the AGM has to be, normally what we do is arrange the AGM for the two companies on the same day. So the subsidiary on one day and the parent follow after. Because we had a change in the board, we haven't been able to think that. So we're now about to set that time. It probably would be within a month and a half because of the notices we have to serve. We were hoping to complete. What happens is the accounts of the subsidiary comes and then gets consolidated with the accounts of the parent, and then we can hold it. So we probably are either 2 months or 3 months away.
All right, Mr. Hines, and then we'll bring down the curtains. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It perhaps need not be said, but I feel it necessary to place on the record that notwithstanding the rigorous examination and interrogation that transpired here today, nothing is personal. It's public duty we are performing, and nothing that has been said here or asked is intended to suggest that we do not respect and appreciate and thank you for your service to this state entity, whether as board, whether as employee, whether as contracted service provider or otherwise, or former chairman, you are here today. But all we are about, and we will insist upon as we have, is the question of genuine accountability to the taxpayer. Thank you very much.
Yes, and in closing, I'll call on Mrs. Sandra Jones to make a brief closing statement at this time.
Chair and member of the committee, on behalf of the board of TGU and UEEGCL, we thank you sincerely for giving us the opportunity to deliberate on the management issues pertaining to TGU and UEEGCL. As said before, this is a very important company making large contribution to national development. And as I indicated in my opening statement, we are committed to institutional strengthening. We do not take what was said this morning here very personal, because we know that we are all committed, and we will go back and try very quickly to address all the issues. I just need to put on the table as well that the 2017 report, we will submit that, because yesterday the board signed off on that. So the Ministry of Finance will get that very promptly. And very promptly, we would be able to have that AGM to get the things going. So again, on behalf of the board, we sincerely thank you for having us here today.
Well, may I say in closing, we too would like to extend our thanks and sincerest appreciation to the board of directors of the Union Estate, also members of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries who were able to make it today. We understand the Permanent Secretary is out of the country. We'd also like to thank the Investments Division for being here, headed by the Permanent Secretary, who came to the proceedings here today. And we really would want to say in closing that, as Mr. Hines indicated, our objective as a committee is to really work towards improving the efficiency, effectiveness, and efficacy of the organization in the most economical of ways at the end of the process. Because we would like, as a Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, to really generate value for money at the end of the process. We want to improve the quality of life and standard of living of the citizenry that we represent in this country, and therefore we will do everything in our power through the mechanism that we have to operate under to bring about those elements that I have identified: efficiency, efficacy, economy in the delivery of quality goods and services to the people of the Republic of TNT. So on behalf of our committee, I'd like to record our appreciation and thanks to all of you being here. We look forward to your presence in the future because we are going to be receiving very shortly 2016 and 2017 financial audited reports, and therefore we may have to invite you in a too-distant future to share with us those accounts and to inquire into their outcomes. So thank you so much once again. This meeting stands adjourned at this time. Thank you so very much.